Hello friends, and welcome back to Random Hearts, and welcome to the backyard. It has been just slightly over a month since we've taken you around the garden, and today I thought I would walk you through for our September garden tour. This is probably going to be one of the last garden tours for this year. We may have one in October, but we are quickly approaching our end of our growing season. In fact, this week we have 2 nights in the 30s, and I may even need to cover some of my garden on those 2 nights. So we're going to take you around the garden. I'll show you what has been happening since you were here last. We have had a ton of production, especially from our peas, and I have been harvesting like crazy off of those. So we're going to go around the garden. I think we'll start right here with this tree, and we'll show you what's been doing well and what has not, and maybe some of the things we will do differently next year. So I think we'll start right here. It's a little bit sunny because it is early morning, but we're going to start with this autumn blaze maple. And we did talk about this early on in the season. When it came out of dormancy this spring, we lost most of the west side of this tree. You can see I have one branch that's coming off of it. The leaves are a little bit on the small side, and it really is struggling. So we had a tree to replace it with, but we did not do that. We're going to see if it'll make it through another winter. The rest of the tree looks very healthy, and we are happy with its location and what it looks like. And it would be a shame to lose such a large tree. But we'll pan down into this garden bed, and you'll see we've got still a lot of color in here. And ignore all the bird droppings. We are in migratory season, and our yard tends to become a hot spot for the birds. They love our space, but we get a lot of their leftovers. So we do clean up a lot of bird droppings this time of year. But we've got a lot of growth in here. Everything looks beautiful. I am seeing a few signs on some of our annuals that we are getting cooler at night. Russian sage is doing quite well. Everything in this bed just looks great. We even had a second flush of blooms on our lilac. And hydrangeas down at this end have come into their color, and we are just looking really nice in this bed. I'm very happy with how things are coming together, how they're kind of melding and becoming one cohesive bed. So we have a friend. So this area right here in our last video with the weed barrier, you saw that we took out the weed barrier, replaced the large bark that was in this section with this smaller bark. That was almost 3-4 weeks ago now, and you can see it's already starting to weather a little. But I'm very happy with how this is moving along in this section here, and it looks so much better. I know it's going to be easier to plant in, and we will actually be getting some of the nutrients from this bark as it breaks down. This section right here has a lot of perennials in it. I have cut back several of them, and we are getting a tiny flush of new blooms, but typically we don't get a huge flush the second time. They just do a little bit of intermittent blossoming, and that's okay because we are close to our end of our season. And still have some of our spring flowers in here. Everything looks great. Up here underneath the elm tree, we have a lot of stuff going on, and I probably need to do a little bit of cutback up there as well, but it all looks great. And if we look over at the plum tree, you'll see I did get the large bark out from underneath that as well, and it is already changing color. This is one of the first trees in our yard to basically show us that fall is here. So it is quickly approaching. As we pan down into the section where the aspen and the barberries are, you can see that my Russian sage in this bed seems to get a little bit too much water. You can see that it's kind of flopping a little there, but that is a sign it does not need as much water as it's getting. So this is one of many planters in the yard, and I used this combination in several this year, and I'm very happy with how it turned out. This is a white supertunia. I cannot remember the exact name on it, but it is done very well. It requires no deadheading, and you can see that it has gotten very large. I also have some Dusty Millers in here, and these have done super well in this. And I have a Dracaena in the center, or a spike plant, and then a sweet potato vine and another petunia over here. This one does require deadheading, and I'm okay with that as long as it's not the whole thing that needs some work. But I'm really happy with how this one has turned out. It gets very little water. In fact, it just gets the water from the sprinkler overflow. This is the bed that sits in front of our deck, and this one does contain our sprinkler box. It actually sits right underneath the sphere in the center, and that makes for easy access if we do need to get into our sprinkler box. And this bed seems to be one of my first flower beds that needs attention in the fall. This one starts dying back very quickly. You can see that my Stella d'Oro daylilies are already starting to flatten out, and that's a pretty good sign that it's time to cut them back. So I will be doing that here pretty soon. I also tend to start cleaning this bed out just because I have so much to do that if I don't start somewhere, it just takes too long. So this will be the first bed that I clean out for the fall season as we prepare for winter. Then over here, I've got some cherry style tomatoes. And honestly, these, when they first started coming out, were way bigger than cherry size. You can see I have a lot of tomatoes on here, but most of them are now a little more small in stature. The first ones we were getting off here were almost plum size. So I thought maybe I had planted the wrong seed, but these have been so productive. This area right here on the deck gets a lot of sunlight. They also get sprinkler overspray, and that helps them to stay consistently moist. We are in the bed that is under our apple tree, and this bed has had quite a few changes this season. In fact, this one has all of our bulbs for our spring flowers, and when those spring flowers start dying back, I end up with a lot of foliage that I cannot cut back for about a month, and I am trying to disguise that with some perennials. We did add some lamium into this bed this year. I also added a peach gaillardia or blanket flower, and last year I put in these 3 echinacea along the deck. Now the echinacea I do think may be in the wrong spot. They are not quite getting enough sun, so I may need to watch that next year and find a different location for them, but I am loving them. As for the wagon planter here, this did beautifully this year. I am so happy with the combination we put into this. I have an annual salvia in the middle, and then some Dusty Miller, some Snowland daisies, and a petunia that you do have to deadhead, but I did like the color of it. And this planter in particular is kind of shallow, so by the time we get to this time of the year, the roots are a little bit root bound and the plants aren't doing quite as well. Also, the annual salvia tends to break off in the wind, and we have had some very windy days, so we have lost some central stalks in that. But everything is looking pretty good. I am happy with how this section is turning out. I have taken out some of my herbs already. I took out my dill and my cilantro, and I'm about ready to take out my parsley and my mint, but this area is looking beautiful. This section right here is where we keep our grow bags, and these were the ones that were super decimated by our hailstorm this year, and they have been so productive. You can see right here I've got a couple of large peppers on here, and I probably could take them at any time. Those are bell peppers. And then I've also got some tomatoes back here, and ignore how these plants look. They did not have good enough support this year, but they're still producing beautifully. These are beefsteak tomatoes in this section. I also have a huge amount of jalapenos on here. They're just all over this plant, and I am about ready to come out and harvest all of those. We had basil in both of these plants, and you know, this has just been quite productive. Even though it is not the most beautiful system, it's worked very well, and I'm super happy with how well these did after that hailstorm. We are now under the pergola, and this is our sitting area. And I almost always have a grouping of 3 planters over here, but you cannot even see the planters this year. This again is one of those super petunias, I think it was a Vista Snowdrift. I'm not sure on that. I will have to check if I did keep the tags. I've also got another sweet potato vine in here, some lobelia. This is a Carolee Petite Gara, and there are bees in here, so I will be careful around that. But it has done beautifully popping out of the top of this planter. I love the spray pattern. I also have some Dusty Millers in here and a lantana that I love the color of. It's got a yellow center and it fades to pink, and it's just been a beautiful combination. And these are overflowing their pots and just look amazing. This bed right here underneath our pergola does not see much of a change from year to year. There are a lot of perennials in this bed, so there isn't much room to change out flowers. I do usually put in some marigolds. These were all marigolds I started from seed, and don't look too closely. I've not had time to deadhead. That is something that becomes kind of a chore I can't get to once I'm back at work and school is in session. So this right here is a Veronica that I planted earlier this season. I have 3 of them in the yard, but this one seems to be struggling with maybe powdery mildew. You can see that the leaves are a little more silvery. That is not something I should have on that plant. Also right here, I've got a Russian sage. This Russian sage is beautiful in this section. This is by far my favorite one in the yard. This one is a little different variety than the other 3 that I have, and I think its location is more ideal for it. It does not get a ton of water, whereas the others get overspray from the sprinkler system. This one thrives, and I love the Dusty Miller that is underneath it. That just pairs up with it beautifully. This section right here is not permanent. We just laid these flagstones here temporarily. These are the additional flagstones we picked up at the beginning of this month to finish off this project that is going around our garden beds. And we did share that in our weed barrier video. So we hopefully will get that completed before snow flies. In this bed right here, I have mostly tomatoes and peppers. I have 3 different varieties of tomatoes, and they have been a little bit slow to come on this year. I think some of that had to do with our hailstorm that we had at the middle of June. That kind of set everything back by about 2 weeks. But I do have some peppers in this bed as well. I've got some jalapenos on this side. These are the El Jefe variety from Johnny Seed, and they have been super productive this year. In fact, they are very hot, a little hotter than we typically like, but 1 pepper goes a long way. In this bed right here, I have another variety of tomatoes. These are the Sweetie tomatoes, and I have grown these quite a few years in the past, and they are a deliciously sweet, almost daisy chain looking tomato. This is how they grow, and they darken from this point downward. So these will turn red, these will be orange, these will be yellow. And they are just a beautiful plant, but the problem is I don't think I had them staked well enough this year, and they've kind of spread out everywhere. Plus, this was another plant that struggled with our hail and just really needed a little extra time. I'm hoping we get that this year. I don't know, we still have quite a few days that we could have production, but we'll see how that goes. I do have peppers back here. Some of them are a little smaller and probably won't do much, but we've got quite a few. Like I've got 4 on this plant alone. And then these right here are beans that I planted in the middle of June. No, I'm sorry. These were planted in the middle of July, right after I took the garlic out of this bed. This was our garlic bed last season, and when I pulled that out in July, that left this open, so I put in bush beans, and then there's some beets back here as well. They're doing okay. I'm not super happy with their production, but we still have a few onions in here that I need to pull, and that is pretty much this bed. In this bed, I have some more of the exact same beans that I had in this one. These are just already in production, and I have quite a few beans on these. In fact, I may even harvest some today, but I've got amethyst and I've got jade green beans in this bed. I also have 2 sections of chives, and I think I may be taking out this whole section this year. I just have way too many for our small little family. In this bed right here, I've got strawberries, and I have buried treasure red and buried treasure white, and they are just doing fabulously. You can see, I don't know if you can get in here, I've got some beautiful strawberries. This is our final garden bed in the yard, and this one by far has been the most productive this year. The peas that are up here, I have harvested so many times. I think we're actually getting to the point where we have had snap peas every single day for almost every meal for the last 2 months, and they are just continuing to grow. And below them, I've got some space spinach, which is not doing super well, but I just planted this about a month ago. And I've also got some rover radishes here, which I do think I've got a couple that are ready to harvest. We can maybe eat those for dinner tonight. But I want to talk to you about the peas in general. You can see how big these are. They're almost, well, they are definitely taller than me. And we've had such a good production on them, and it has been a super hot year. So I don't know what has changed, but the biggest thing I think has changed is the amount of light they're getting, and they are not competing with tree roots anymore. We did have 4 volunteer elm trees that sat along the fence line that the neighbor gave us permission to take down earlier this season, and that was very helpful. Everything in this bed has done so much better, and my husband was also noticing that the strawberries are doing better. If you are keeping track, you realize that we did not go through 5 garden beds. In fact, we missed an entire bed. As I was driving to work, I realized this, so I called my husband and asked him to do a quick video that I would voice over later. And this is the gem I got.
Here's the missing bed, the bed of Atlantis. You can see we have a lot of onions in here, like a forest of onions. Backing out. You can see the tops to a lot of carrots. Can't prove there's carrots under there without pulling one out, but those are carrots. And you can see we have some more onions. Large bulbs back there. They are getting ready. We'll dry them out. And then here's our last Omero red cabbage, which we're going to have shrimp tacos with. And that is the missing bed of Atlantis.
I'm up on the deck now of the shed, and this is basically a repeat of the plants that are under the pergola. I've got another Carolee Petite Gara in here, and I can hear the bees in it. I don't know if we can see them or not. I've also got that lantana in here, and another sweet potato vine, and another supertunia. And everything is giant over here. It's doing super well on its drip system. I do have my fairy garden under here. I've got a wire vine I'm going to try to keep, but that has been shrouded most of the season. You can't even see it. On this side over here, I have got another repeat of the supertunia and another petunia. You'll see that I have a lot of the same types of flowers in the garden, and that is because if I try to dot them around here and there, it becomes a little more cohesive, and I feel like everything kind of goes together. You'll see this plant right here. This is a mum, and I had to replace the Carolee Petite Gara that was in here because the drip system was accidentally pulled out of that pot, and it was not noticed until the plant actually died. And that is something that you just got to be careful of when you've got automatic drip systems and irrigation. They are not foolproof, and you do need to keep an eye on your plants. And if you haven't seen our shed video, we did give you a full tour of our shed and how it looks and how we organize in there. And I'll link that up in the cards for you to go watch. But I think that's about everything for this section. We're going to head over to the fire pit now. In this section under our Canadian red chokecherry here, we did plant 3 new perennial shrubs this year. I've got a 9-bark right here, a burning bush back here, and a barberry here. And I'm not sure these plants are thriving in this section. We may need to add some drip line to this or change out the drip line. I'm not sure what's going on here. This barberry is already defoliating, and some of the other barberries in the yard are changing color already, so I'm hoping that is all that's going on and it's not just dying. The zinnias I've got in this section here are just glorious. I love my zinnias over here. They thrive under this tree, and I think they get a perfect amount of sunlight, and you can see the bees are just attacking them. They're all over. I do cut these for cut flower arrangements, and I have not been out here recently to take any of the older blooms out, but everything is looking quite beautiful in this section, and I'm super happy with them. I've already got the Zowie Yellow Flames on order for next year because by far those are my favorite. And as we move down, I've got some branching sunflowers that are just starting to come into bloom, and those are so late. I just don't think I will ever order that seed again. We did finish that seed off. You'll see that I've got a verbena right there that kind of doesn't match the rest. I'm not sure what happened. They are all supposed to be red, but I've got a pink and white one in there, so we just left it. Down here I've got some echinacea and some new yarrow, and along with that nepeta. This section just looks gorgeous, and we love our new fire pit area. Well, friends, this is where we are going to end this September garden tour. We have been riddled with problems with this video. I guess the moral of the story is do not try to film right before you have to go to work. Our outro had corrupted audio, and we did not realize till it was much too late. Our garden has produced so well this year, and we are so happy with what is going on in it. And we just wanted to share, to show you what our Wyoming backyard is capable of producing. And I'm just amazed every time I walk out into this space, and it just fills my heart with joy to see all the things that are blooming and growing, and all of the animals and insects that inhabit our yard. And we're gonna leave you with some bird's eye top-down shots of the yard. My husband got his drone out and took some video. The first drone shot will be on June 2nd. That was prior to our hailstorm, and everything was just coming out of dormancy and getting nice and green. Even the lawn wasn't quite green yet. And the second one is from today, and you can see quite the difference. We hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments, please leave those in the comment section. And if you have not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. We hope you're having a lovely day wherever you are, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.